Okay, Beryl, you're following with an article. I have one question. When I get to it, I'm going to ask you. Right? So follow along. Something that's unclear in this Gemara, we'll see. Okay. This list of our learning should be a panacea and a for Shlema for everyone that needs. We're going to start Vav Amid Beis. There's a Mishnah here. See the Mishnah? Just towards the bottom. Ayel Ariam Karav Bachadasa. Ariam uses 11 kayanim to bring a Ariam. How does that work? So it says Habasar B'chamisha. The actual animal itself, that would be 5 kayanim. Akravayim, that would be the innards that are going to be burnt on the altar. The Haselas, the Hayayin, the Shnayim. Each of those are going to have 2. So if I have 3 items that require 2 kayanim, that's going to be 6, right? 2 plus 2 plus 2. Plus 5 is going to be 11. So to bring a ram required 11 kayanim. Par karav besim varba. However, if it's a bull, that would require 24 kayanim. Big difference. Apparently, they're looking for more kayanim, not less kayanim. There's a benefit in breaking it up, into spreading it out into more kayanim because berevam hadasmela. So, haraish v'haregel. There was the head and there was the foot, which was the right leg. Haraish bechad v'haregel b'shnayim. Here, it's already the head. One person can carry, but the leg already requires 2 people to carry. It's a discussion if it was cut again or if it was just 2 people carrying it together. There's a problem with cutting it into sections that wasn't designated originally to cut. So far we're holding by 3, right? The tail in the left leg, it's the other part of the end, is ha'uketz b'shnayim. The tail is 2. V'regel b'shnayim. That's another 4. We're holding now 7. Hachazav al-gera, the chest and the throat, which includes the windpipe and the lungs and the esophagus. Hachazav be'echad, the chest was 1 person. The hagera b'shleisha, and then the throat was 3. So that's another 4. We were holding by 7, so we're holding at 11. Shtei yadayim b'shnayim. The 2 hands were 2 people, not 2 each, just 2. The 2 front legs. So 13, right? Shtei defanis b'shnayim. The 2 sides were 2, so we're holding at 15. The 2 sides of the animal. Hakravayim v'aselas v'ayayin b'shleisha shleisha. 3 each. For the innards, the flour and the wine, 9, right? 3 times 3 is 9, which is 9 plus 15, it's 24. Okay? This is by communal sacrifices. But if it's an individual carbon, if he wants to bring it, then he could bring it. Yeah, the Mepharshim over here are trying to figure out who brings it. I mean, if it's a Kohen that's bringing his own sacrifice, then fine. But if it's a Yisrael that's giving a sacrifice to another Kohen, we said in the beginning of the Masechta that maybe a Kohen, before he does every Karban, he should be sequestered. We said, but how does he know if he's going to be doing the Karban? Well, now he knows, because if the Yisrael can choose whoever he gives it to, the Mepharshim are discussing this Gemara, seems to be that you can choose a Kohen. So, it could be just 1 person. I mean, it's going to be a lot of work, but it's 1 person. If Shaitan, when it comes to cutting up and skinning and cutting up the animal, that was done equal. There was no difference. I was going to say that you don't need a kayin for this. Tana was taught in a brisa. If Shaitan v'nituchan shavim bizar, it means that they're equal in that you don't need a kayin to cut up the animal. That's a prerequisite to other services, but it's not the real service, skinning the animal.
cutting up the lefty.
Yeah, all alone.
And that includes the carrying. That's
Yeah.
another in defiance of the rest of the mission consent. So he goes like back.
Yeah, you can get one kohen to go back and forth. Stay off my carbon. This is my. Okay. Yeah. Amar Chizkiah. Chizkiah says, "Minayin lahefshet v'nitoch sheshavu b'zar." How do I know that the skinning and the cutting up of the animal is acceptable with a non-kohen? Shenemar v'nostim b'nei Aaron ha'kohen eishal mizbeach. Yeah, here we start this it's a long sugya. Okay, where do we know this from? We know it's from a pasuk that says that the kohen puts fire on the mizbeach. Fire, the kohen puts on the mizbeach. But when it comes to cutting up the animal, that doesn't require a kohen. Yeah. The Gemara says, 1 second. Isn't that necessary for itself? That we need a kohen to light the fire? So what are you telling me? That you have an extra pasuk that can tell me that the hefshet v'nitua, the skinning and the cutting up doesn't require a kohen because it says kohen over here, which means dafka here but not there. 1 second, it needed to tell me there itself because I wouldn't have known that you need a kohen to light the fire. Amar Rav Simi Barashi. Rav Simi Barashi says, Ashkachte la'abaya davimas b'lei lebrei. I overheard, or I found that Abaye was teaching his son. Then he answered to this. He was explaining to Chizkiah, who's his son, probably Rabbi Bar Abaye, right? He says v'shachat. It says that the kohen shech. Not the kohen. It says v'shachat. First it says that he puts his hands on it, and then it says that he shachts it. Shchita ksher bizarre. A non-kohen is allowed to do the shchita of the sacrifice. V'chim bas. Why would I have thought that you need a kohen? That now you're telling me that you don't need a kohen? Because it says you and your sons with you should guard the kahuna. So continues for all matters of the altar. So I would have understood well. All matters of the altar would include also the shchita. You see, it says that you should slaughter the sacrifice, and the sons of Aaron, the kohanim, will bring the blood. That means that the blood is the kohanim, but the shechita is not the kohanim. V'samach yadai v'shachat. It says that he will lean to the hand. The owner of the sacrifice was not a kohen, or it doesn't have to be a kohen. Leans his hand on the sacrifice, v'shachat, and he does the shechita. It says that together. He leans his hands on it and he shechs it. That tells me that the shechita is kosher if it's not a kohen. I'm not sure why I need that. It's what the Gemara just did. It gave me 2 limudim for this. One is that it says v'hikrivu b'nei Aaron ha'kohanim mikabala ve'ela, and then it's telling me v'samach v'shachat. I'm not sure why I need both of those. Yeah, why do I need both of those points? I'm not sure. So Michti, let's see. We didn't get to our point. Our point is we're trying to explain Hefshet V'nitua. We didn't even discuss the cutting it up. I mean, Abaye is quoting a brisa when he's teaching his son, but he didn't quote the cutting. He didn't say anything about cutting up the animal. Now it says Michti. Let's see. This is Abaye continuing. Mikabala ve'elach mitzvos kona. So anything that's from the receiving of the blood and onward requires a kohen. So v'nasnu b'nei Aaron, the v'nasnu b'nei Aaron that we said before, that they need to light the fire. Now that pasuk is after when it says v'shachat. So lamali.
It's after the shechita.
Yeah. At least the pasuk is. Yes, you want to get a chumash? So if that's the case, so in that pasuk that says v'nasnu b'nei Aaron akayin, it shouldn't have to say v'nasnu b'nei Aaron akayin because mikabala ve'ela. It's already the kayanim. Thank you. It's already the kayanim. So l'mutei hefshem v'nitua. It's coming to tell me that the fire requires kayanim. In other words, if once you're adding in that it still needs to say when it requires a kayan, then it doesn't say that it requires a kayan by the cutting up and skinning. So we're mamish in the middle of in the beginning of Vayikra, the first section here. The pasuk starts off. The parshas begins. Person that will bring a sacrifice in ma'ila karbanai, v'samach yale al reisha ayla, v'shachar espena bakar, right? When the first 5 psukim of Vayikra. It doesn't say who does that. They put the fire and they put the wood on the fire. And then they put everything on top of that. Put fire, put wood on the fire, and then they put everything on top of it. And it doesn't say by the hifshid asa'ila that it has to be done by a kayan. But right after that it says v'nasna b'nei Aaron kayan. That's telling me that the hifshid in nituach doesn't require a kayan. Even though it's written after the Kabbalah. Okay. Now the Gemara asks, Bakati itzchich, but nevertheless, I should still require, what was our original pasuk, that the kohen needs to bring the fire. You're basically telling me that because it says v'nasnu b'nei Aaron hakayin eish al mizbeach, that's telling me, that's an extra pasuk, that's telling me that only the fire needs to be brought, but not the hefshet v'nituah. 1 second, I still need to know that the fire needs to be brought by a kohen. So the Gemara says, it could have thought different. To say, given the lava by the makva kaparu loiti baikuna. Oh, I'm sorry. This is all part of the question. Why do I need the pasuk to tell me that he needs to bring the fire? Because it's an avodah that's not ma'akev the kapara. The lava avodah the makva kapara. It doesn't affect the atonement. So I could have thought loiti baikuna, kamash malanda baikuna. It's telling me that the fire needs to be. This is the explanation why it's legufei. Why is it leguf? Why do I need it? The pasuk, and I can't learn from it. Because it's telling me that the kohen has to bring the fire. I would have thought that only things that are part of the kapara, the sprinkling of blood and all of that, but this is not part of the kapara. So the Gemara adjusts this. And it says you have a point. You can't learn from the bringing of the fire. We go to the next pasuk. Not from Benasta B'nei Anachayin Eisham Mizbeach, but from, that was pasuk Zion. We go to pasuk Ches. Va'orchu b'nei Anachayin Mesin Nesachim Esreish V'Sepader Alei Eitzim Asher Alei Shalom Mizbeach. Michti. The Gemara says 1 second. Let's take a look at this. Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kahuna. We know already. Once the blood was caught, sprinkling and the taking of the blood, the catching of the blood, taking it up to the altar, and sprinkling it, that all requires a kohen. So va'archu lamali, but it means va'archu b'nei Aaron hakayinim. Why does it? And they should arrange the fats, the pieces and the fats on the fire. Why does it have to say that? That's after the blood. So it's coming to tell me that it's coming to tell me that only those parts of the service which are after the blood require a kohen, but not the skinning and the cutting it up. That takes me back to Chizkiya's halacha. Chizkiya originally said V'nasnu b'nei Aaron, or the Mishnah told us to me, but Chizkiya's source was V'nasnu b'nei Aaron. We've just adjusted it to be V'archu b'nei Aaron. Yeah? Okay. Gemara asks, now, we're asking that maybe when it says that the kayanim need to put the parts of the animal on the fire, maybe we're medayik from that the kayanim need to put the fats on the fire, but in the pieces of the animal, but the kayanim don't need to. We don't need a kayan to cut it up. Someone else could cut it. How do you know that that's the correct deal? Maybe it's coming to be mimayet. It's coming to exclude that a kayan doesn't need. We don't need a kayan to put the two slabs of wood on the fire. Now, it turns out that we're only talking about the afternoon. Why? Because we have to go to Parshas Tzav. We're going to recite Karbanos a little differently now with all of this. In Parshas Tzav, it says, the fire on the altar is burning, it should not be put out. The kayan should put on it the wood every morning. So it says that I need a kayan for the wood. But what about the wood for the afternoon? That it doesn't say.
Is the wood maker kapara?
The wood maker kapara? No, it's not as an individual sacrifice. I mean, every person brings their sacrifice. What is
the wood is only one time?
Yeah, we needed a kayan to put the wood on in the morning. We're saying maybe we don't need that. Maybe it's coming to tell me that I don't need a kayan to put the wood on in the afternoon, because we don't have a pasuk that tells me that. And then I don't know anything about the cutting it up.
No, but they already have it. I mean, that's what he said there. Because it's one maker kapara, then it doesn't have to be a kayan.
Right. And economic. So you're asking, why would I think that I? Yeah, that's what you're asking. Why would I think that I need it?
Right.
So maybe the answer to that would be that because in the morning you see that you need it, so I would think I need it in the afternoon. Kamash malan, that you don't need it in the afternoon. But the Gemara says no. Mistabra divcha de kavasei memayet. Look, what are we talking about? Va'archu b'nei arnakainim. Back in the beginning of Vayikra, the kayan puts the fats and the pieces on the fire. Now you're jumping and telling me that he puts the pieces and the fats on the fire, but not the two slabs of wood in the afternoon. It's probably referring to something right there and not something that's going on right then. That means he doesn't have to cut it up and he doesn't have to skin it. You can get someone else to do that. So divcha de kavasei, the sacrifice divcha, a zayin in a dalet interchangeable. So zivcha de kavasei, the carbon itself is what we're referring to, not to some other service that it's coming to exclude.
I thought that changing was only done in the Yerushalmi.
Well, it's really an Aramaic. It's probably more in the Yerushalmi. Where do you find it? Zahav is dahav, gold, right? You have to think about it. Zavach, yeah, that's another one. Okay. Adarabba, the Gemara says, 1 second. See the kavasei memayet. We're talking about, we have two like commonalities. There are two things that could be the fact that it could connect them. One is, okay, we're dealing with putting the fats on the pieces on the fire. That we said needs to be a kayan. Do we need a kayan to cut it up? So he said, well, it's only the fats it's only the piece and the fats that need to be placed on the fire requires a kayan. Now we have two options, but not the cutting up of that sacrifice, and that would be common because it's the same sacrifice. It's coming to exclude that. And the other thing is, and not something else that needs to be put on the fire, and not some other arrangement in it. So that's also a commonality. So it says, maybe it's coming to exclude something else that goes on the fire, which is the wood. Gemara says, don't think like that. The Kayan brings everything up to the altar. That's a quote from the pasuk. Zu halachas ivar mekevach. That's bringing the limbs to the rear. Halachas ivar mekevach to the baikuna. Halachas eitzim loy baikuna. The bringing of the wood to the altar does not require a kayan. Interesting. I missed the main point. 1 second. I'm still holding by just bringing it to the mizbeach. Cedar snake gets reitzim, but putting the wood on the fire, that is baikuna. It does require kayan. If that's the case, so it anyways requires a kayan. We were trying to exclude that it doesn't require a kayan. Where do I see that it doesn't require a kayan? Because the kayan has to put the fats on the altar, but not the wood in the afternoon. No. So if that's the case, he does have to put the wood in the afternoon. So varchu lamalik. But then why does it say varchu? That's lamutei hafshet v'nituach. The only thing we have left. What is the kayan not required? What service does not require a kayan? That would be the skinning and the cutting up of the animal doesn't require a kayan. Okay. The following piece is a bit of an issue. The Gemara repeats the question. I see the Gemara takes it out. There's a bit of an issue. I think the other Rishonim also take it out. What's the Gemara asking? Maybe you need that for itself. That what? Do I need what for itself? That I have to put the Kayan puts the fats on the altar. That's odd. I need that. Okay. Ella, the Gemara goes like this. Let's Ella v'hiktar Kayan as a kala mayasa. We're skipping that question that the Gemara asks us. What's the question? Ella v'hiktar Kayan as a kala mayasa. Yeah, the Gemara adds in some other words, I think. What does it mean? V'hiktar Kayan as a kala. Let's take a look at that. Where is that? Yeah. After the order of the psukim is like this. He leans on the sacrifice. That's pasuk daled. He shechs the sacrifice. That's probably all the owner. Then, which is the non-kayan. The krivu b'nei aaron hakayanim esadam. They bring the blood. Now we mentioned the first mention of the kayan. They bring it to the altar. Then it says another pasuk vav. They skin it and they cut it up into pieces. No mention of a kayan. Then it goes back to talking about the kayan. The bnei aaron, the kayan brings the fire on the mizbeach and he puts the wood on the fire. Then it has another mention of a kayan. The sons of Aaron, the kayan, and bring the pieces, the head and the fats. They put it on the fire, on the wood that's on the fire. Pasuk Tes says that they wash out the innards, and the kayan offers everything on the fire. Gemara is asking, what do you mean everything on the fire? You already said he puts the things on the fire, right? What is this coming to tell me? V'hikriv hakayin es hakala mizbecha. So zuchei lachas ivarim lekevesh. That's the walking of the limbs up to the altar. That is considered an avodah that requires kuhuna. Halachas ivarim lekevesh the baikuna. The walking of the limbs to the altar requires kuhuna. Halachas eitzim loy baikuna. But walking the wood to the altar doesn't. Hasidish negivs eitzim baikuna. 1 second. Did I just repeat the same thing? I'm sorry. I jumped back to the pasuk before. 1 second. Let me start that over. Victor, I jumped back 4 lines. So I was rereading it. Victor Akainas Akala Mayasa. What is this coming to tell me? Lamute Hefshet V'Nituah. That's coming to exclude Hefshet V'Nituah. That you don't need a kayan to do the skinning. Now, how did this come in over here? We already said why you don't need for Hefshet V'Nituah, because we said that Ba'arfu was excluding that. Maybe in order to read this Gemara, you have to follow the question. maybe this Gemara is a continuation of that question. The question was, maybe you can't learn from Ba'arku either. And the Gemara answers, okay, so we'll learn from V'hikr Hakayin Asakal. And that would fit together. Now, that's what the girl's doing. Yeah, the girl's taking this whole thing, and he drops also Ella v'hiktir. Yeah, you see what it says now? V'hikr v'akayin asakalam is becha. I think what the girl's doing is he's saying, don't read it v'hikr v'akayin asakalam is becha. Read it Ella v'hiktir hakayin asakalam is becha, which is the pasuk. There's another pasuk, but not in our section. That v'hikr v'akayin asakalam. It's supposed to be Ella v'hiktir hakayin asakalam is becha. Now we're going back and we're going to summarize everything that we learned. When it says v'hiktir hakayin asakalam is becha, zohi lachas varam lekevesh. Okay, that's what we said before. Okay, you don't need the wood being walked to the altar. It does not require a kayim. But the arrangement of the wood does require a kayim. V'nasnu, the putting of the fire, that's legufei. That we said that we needed a pasuk for anyway. Okay. V'archu. Okay, now we're going to in that pasuk Zion, when it says "V'nasnu b'nei Aaron hakayin eish al mizbeach v'archu eitzam ala eish," that pasuk says like this. In that pasuk it says "V'archu." In the following pasuk, it says "V'archu b'nei Aaron hakayin es nesachim." The kayinim are putting up the pieces, so it says "V'archu." They will put up. That's a plural, right? V'archu. So that's shnayim. B'nei Aaron. That's another plural. That's shnayim. Hakayanim, that's another plural. That's shnayim. This is coming to teach me that 2 plus 2 plus 2 is going to be 6. That means that a sheep requires 6 kayanim. Where do we say 6? So we said that there were 5 plus the innards. That's what we said by the sheep, right? Except by the ayah, we said that the innards were 2. And by the sheep, we said the innards was 1, right? Yeah. Akrabayim was just 1 kain by the sheep. By the ram, it was 2. Okay. So now, Amar Rav Hamnuna. Kashalei l'Rabbi Lazar, Haibe ben Bakr ksiv, ben Bakr esem v'arba bay. The first chapter of Vayikra talks about the Karban Olam. So when it starts off, it says, "Speak to the Jewish people and tell them that when you will bring a sacrifice for me from the animal, from the cattle, from the flock, you bring your animal. Now, if you bring the Oila, and it starts off, if it's from Ben Bakar, if it's from the cattle, so then it says the following, and that's what we were discussing. Pasuk Yud, which we didn't discuss yet, then says, what if you're bringing from the sheep or from the goats? So that whole discussion over here, Va'archa b'nei Aaron and Hakayanim, is all talking about Ben Bakar, all talking about a bull or cattle. So if that's the case, why are you telling me that a sheep, we learned from there that a sheep has 6 Kayanim? It's not even talking about a sheep, it's talking about cattle. So, okay, so the Gemara says, V'nichalei, ala etzam asher ala eis asher mizbeach. This is how he answered it. That's an interesting expression of an answer. So Rav Hamnuna is saying that Rabbi Lazar had a question on this because it says that pasuk is referring to Ben Bakar. V'nichalei, and Rabbi Lazar answered it that ala etzam asher ala eis asher mizbeach, that he puts it on the fire that's on the wood that's on the fire that's on the mizbeach. Ezu davar number by etzam esha mizbeach. Where do you have that that reference of wood, fire, and mizbeach? This is referring to the Tamid Shel Shachar. So the Tamid Shel Shachar, the carbon Tamid, that was a sheep. So it's referencing the pasuk. Va'ishalam mizbeach tukad by lesichbe ubir aleh kain etzim ba'beika rachla ilav v'shlam. It's referring to that pasuk. But that's telling me those three references are telling me the carbon Tamid. Okay, what did we get from this Gemara? At the Hefshet V'Nituach, we learned that it's the skinning and the cutting out could be done by a zar. We learned that from V'Archu B'nei Arna. That's what it is. Okay. Amar Rabasi, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabasi says the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Zar Shasider Esamaracha Chayiv. If a zar arranges the wood on the fire, he's chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. Now, I want to know when it says arranging the wood on the fire. This I needed the article if I didn't have it at home. Arranging the fire, what's that in relationship to the two slabs of wood that go on the fire? Does it say anything over there? It doesn't have a note? Oh, it expects me to know it. So I don't know if that means, in the Psukim, it goes like this. In the Psukim, it says, yeah, Yitzi, if you want to comment. V'nasnu b'nei Aaron akayin eish ala mizbeach, v'archu eitzim ala eish. They put fire on the mizbeach, and then they put wood on the fire. Now, what is the fire?
Which Mizbeach is this referring to?
This is the Mizbeach Achitzin, and I'm assuming it's the copper Mizbeach. They called it the copper Mizbeach. It wasn't the copper in the days.
This is the large one.
The large Mizbeach, right?
Okay.
And there was 3 fires, probably. There's different opinions. This is the one on the right, on the eastern side.
Okay.
That's what it seems. So, okay, whatever the case is, however this is working, Rabbi Yechanan says that if the Zar arranges the Maracha, he's Chayiv Misa. You need a Kayan to arrange this fire. What should he do if there was a Zar that did this? So, Parka v'chayzer v'saydra. He takes it apart, the arrangement, and then he sets it up again. The Gemara says, Maya Hanile. So what did he gain? This is a surprising Havamina here. Ella Parka Zar v'saydra Kayan. Rather, what it means is that the Zar undoes it, and the Kayan redoes it. I don't know why you need a Zar to undo it. Why can't the Kayan undo it? Rashi says, I don't need a Kayan to undo it. It's even a Zar can undo it. As long as I have a Kayan that rearranges it, then it's going to be fine. I want to say it's messy. Maskefler Reb Zera. Reb Zera has a question. Reb Zera was around, he traveled to Israel and he went to study under Rabbi Yechanan. I don't know if he's really under Rabbi Yechanan, but he's definitely there with Rabasi. So he asks Rabasi, who's quoting Rabbi Yechanan, the arrangement of the wood was done very early in the morning. He's asking, it's done at night. Is there something that's done at night, and the services that are done at night that are really so puzzle for a Zar that there's actually a Chiyuv Misa? Usually the temple services are all by day. Here you're telling me something that's done by night, and you're throwing into it that there's also a Chiyuv Misa if a Zar does it. Because that's very strong. We don't have anything else like that. The Gemara says, we don't have anything else like that. We do. But what about the fats that are burnt at night if the last carbon didn't get burnt, the carbon tamid shall be in our body didn't get burnt. That requires a kayan, and if someone else does it, there would be a chiyuv misa, the burning of the fats. That the Gemara says seifa by the yamamo. No, that even though it's at night, but that's just the follow-up of what was supposed to be done by day. The Gemara says, what about very chuma sadeshin? Tchilas very chuma sadeshin? Question mark. To stop the question there. What about the chuma sadeshin? That's also done very, very early in the morning before dawn, right? From Mikrei Sagever, they would already start the chuma sadeshin. So the Gemara says that's tchilas avayda diamamu. That's already the beginning of the day. I know it's early in the morning and it's still dark out, but that's considered the day already. How do you see that? This is another Rabasi Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Learned this before. He has to wash his hands before the service. Now, if it would be not part of the daily service, when he washed his hands before the Chuma Sadeshin, he would have to wash again. But we're saying that no. We're saying that this is part of the day. I know it's very early, but it's still considered part of the day. Kasha. So we're back to the question. The original question of Reb Zera was, where do we find a service that's done by night? The setting up of the fire, which is done by night. The Chuma Sadeshin, that was part of the day service, but the setting up of the fire. Yeah. For some reason, this is not a scientific answer. But for some reason, when we can't compare something to anything else, it bothers our mind. Like, how does magnetism work? Well, I don't have anything to compare it to. Just give up. It does work. Okay. Yeah, what Ramesh is asking is, so what that we don't have anything to compare it to? So I'm saying, whatever it is, that's you don't need to have two things for every year. Okay, so the Gemara says, in response to Reb Zera's question, it says, rather we have to adjust it. How was it stated? Hachiyitmar. Amar Abasim Rabbechen and Zersa Sidish Neged Reitzim Chayev Hayel Vavei Desyaini. Okay, I'm not sure what the emphasis is here. There's two emphases. There's the arrangement of the two slabs of wood that we didn't mention before. Before we mentioned if the Zorth arranges the fire. And we said 1 second, but that was done by night. So now we're saying no. If the Zor arranges the two slabs of wood, which is a day service. So what was the arrangement of the fire before if it wasn't the two slabs of wood? Now this is when I'm lost a little bit. Is there a comment over there, Darryl? The second that you see, the Amar Abasi Amar Rabbechanan, Zor Shasidah Shnegis Reitzim Chayev Hayel Vavei Desyaini. So let's jump to the Parsha in Parsha Tzav. Over here it says the arrangement of the fire. We say this in the morning, right? So, Va'ishal Masbeach Tukad by Leisichbeh, Uvir Alea Kain Eitzim Babaker, and the Kain will put on its wood. So this is clear that the two slabs of wood need to be done by the Kain in the morning. The morning, two slabs of wood. So, this is Mamash the Pasuk. And Rabbi Yechanan says if the Zar does it, so then he's Chayev Misa, because it's a daily service. Maskefla Rava Elamata Tibai Pius. Rava asks a question. If that's the case, then why don't you have a lottery?
What happened with this thing at night?
Apparently, there's an arrangement of the fire before the two slabs of wood are put on. I think the fire needs to be arranged, and then they would put on two slabs of wood. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe they would fan it a little bit, or maybe it means they would light something like twigs. I'm not sure, but then they would put on the two slabs of wood. So originally, Rabasi was talking about if he arranges the maracha, he's chayev. A zar that does this is chayev. So we said, but that's a problem because we don't find anything else that's done by night that a zar should be chayev. So you say, okay, we're talking about the two slabs of wood, which is done by day, and that's avodas yom. Now, is that really done by day? It's called done. It's done by biker. It's done by biker. So that's what Rabbi Yechanan is saying. It's done by day. Rabbi says it's done by day. If that's considered avodas yom, then why don't you have to do a lottery for it? The Gemara says right away, Rabbi forgot. He forgot a brisa. The brisa says that the one that did the lottery, the one that won the lottery for the Chumas Sedeshin, also sets up the fire, arranges the fire, and also puts on the two slabs of wood. Those are two stages, clearly two stages. What's the first stage? What's the second stage? I'm not sure. Let's see, the Chaf Beis is where we had this the first time. Yuske b'sida maracha b'shnei gizriyatzim. Doesn't explain it over here either. What the difference is. The Siddur HaMaracha was by night, and the Shnei Gizriyatzim was by day. And I'm not sure exactly what that means. Maybe Siddur HaMaracha means one of the other fires. Maybe because there were three fires. Maybe Siddur HaMaracha was on another one. And the Siddur Shnei Gizriyatzim was on the one that the Kamen was going to go on. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what's the. I don't know what was done by the Siddur HaMaracha. Yeah. Now it's like ready for perspective. All right. So you would arrange the coals, and then you put on the two new pieces of wood. That's maybe. Okay. Right.
You get the thing going. Then when you want to establish the fire, that's like the ship. It's not going to
Right.
by itself.
Right. Okay. So we had a question over here from Rava that you should require a lottery. The Gemara says, well, Rava forgot the Mishnah that there is a brisa that there is a lottery for it. And it's just not an independent lottery. It's the lottery that whoever won the Chumas Sedeshin also does this. So the Gemara asks, L'meimra, this comes out. The fact that Rabbi asked that question on the statement of Rabbi Yechanan says that the Siddur Shnei Gizriyatzim are done by day, that tells me. And then he asks that, okay, so if it's done by day, then it should have its own lottery. That means that only things that are done by day require a lottery. But what about the limbs? Well, did we say that the limbs require a lottery? I was asking, but what about the limbs? They require a lottery. Now, I noticed one of the commentaries, I think it was Rabbi Hananel. It says you're right. The limbs usually don't require a lottery. To put them if they didn't get burned. But it turns out that what he's saying is that there's different options here. I'm explaining this. We did a lottery in the morning. Did we do a lottery in the afternoon? We're discussing the limbs at night. I think Hebron was a lottery there. So one opinion was that whoever did the carbon in the morning did the one in the afternoon. So the way we would have to explain this is that the lottery that was done in the morning also applies to the afternoon, which means that the limbs also need to go back on. And which Kayan puts them back on? I guess the Kayan that was supposed to put them on in the first place. The other explanation had to do with that you're right. The Gemara says that you don't need a lottery for the afternoon, except on Shabbos. On Shabbos, because they switched in the middle, in between the Tamid Shel Shachar and the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim, they had a new group of Kainim there, so they did a new lottery on Shabbos. But did they really put the returning of the limbs at night? Which Kayan would be responsible to do that? Apparently, it was part of the lottery. The Gemara answers Seifa Vaididi Yamamo. We gave this answer before. Don't tell me that that's at night. That's really the end of the day service. So that's why there's a lottery there. But what about the Chuma Sadeshin? That's done by day. Okay, we asked this before. We said Mishum Maisa Shahaya. You know what the truth is that you don't really need a lottery for the Chuma Sadeshin. The Gemara is giving a different answer. It could have. I don't know why the Gemara didn't answer that it's Tchilas Sabayda. The Gemara could have answered that. But the Gemara says we had a story where two people were running, and one pushed the other one, or whatever. So they instituted the lottery, but originally it didn't require a lottery. Now the Gemara says, "Lameimra da avodas yaim, b'shazar chayav ala misa by pius, ein zar chayav ala misa loy by pius." What are you telling me here? Rava's question was, if it's something that's done by day and a zar is not allowed to do it, that requires a lottery. Is that the only thing that requires a lottery? What about shchita or shchita? That, yes, I know it's done by day, but a zar is allowed to do the shchita. And we have a lottery. The first lottery was, well, not the first winner of the second lottery was Mishaichet, who's going to do the shchita. So you see, we have lotteries even for something that a zar does. So shani shchita the tchilas avaydim. Shchita is different. That's already part of the sacrifice. There's a lottery that's there. If a zar did the shchita, would he join into that lottery? No. We mentioned before that the lottery was done only if there was going to be a kohen doing the shchita. I think that's how we put it, right? Mi sheichet. It would just be for the kohen. Yeah. Okay. Amar Marzutra. Vitamer Ravashi. Marzutra says, and some say Ravashi says. Banan Laitanan Hachi. We didn't learn, we're going back to Sider Shnei Gizri Eitzim. Rabbi Yochanan says it's considered by day. He says, we didn't learn that it's by day. Amalem Amamuna, Tsuru Megias Manashchita. They only needed daylight for the Shchita. But setting up the wood, it doesn't say that they needed daylight. So it wasn't done by day. The Gemara says, you're right. You know why it doesn't say they needed light? Really, it was done by day. But they didn't make a big deal about it because if it was set up and it wasn't done on time, it was done too early. So they would just take it apart and put it back. It wasn't a big deal. Yikadamri, Maskefler Reb Zera. Some say that Reb Zera's question was different. We're going back to the question of Reb Zera. Do you have a service that's not the concluding service that is puzzle for a zar? We're saying the end is a chiyuv misa. We said before we had this discussion. I think it was Rav and Levi. Remember that? There were four things Rav said. Four things Rav said that if a Zar does, there's a Chiyuv Misa. And Levi added in Shumas Adeshem. That was on Daf Chav Daled. Amar Rav, above Avodah Zar Chayv Misa. Zrika Achtar Nisach Hamayim Nisach Hayayim. Levi Amar Shumas Adeshem. And the rule of this was that it needed to be a concluding service. It can't be something that still had things afterwards. Even though a Zar wasn't allowed to do it, but for a Chiyuv Misa, it needed to be the conclusion. So Reb Zera is now asking, what are you telling me that the setting up of the wood is a Chiyuv Misa? If the Zar does it, it's not a concluding service. You have to, after you put up the wood, you put the carbon on it. Okay. This Gemara here is heavily edited. I mean, needs to be heavily edited. Huge chunks of this Gemara are taken out, probably by Rashi also, but clearly by the Grove. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll skip to the words Ela I Itmar. It's 6 lines down. We had a question. Is there a Chiyuv Misa on something that's not the concluding service? Ela I Itmar Hachi Itmar. We have to do it. We have to state it differently. Amar Abasi Amar Beichem Zarsh Sidish Negus Reitzim Chayav Hayel Vaved Tamei. Not because it's Avedas Yai. Because one of the ways of looking at the setting up of the wood is I could view it as a prerequisite to the sacrifice, or I can view it as its own, sort of like its own carbon. Not its own carbon, but I can view it as a Vaidatam. It's a complete service. That's the end of it. That's what Rabbi Yochanan was saying when he says that if the Zar sets up the wood, it's a Chiyuv Misa because that's the completion of it. Maskef la Rava. Rava says if that's the case, then it should require a lottery. The Gemara says, "V'lei by pious doesn't require a lottery." We learned before, so the Gemara doesn't say Shtamitzi over here. The Gemara, because the Gemara is going to, before the Gemara said Shtamitzi, that Rava forgot the price. Here the Gemara doesn't say he forgot it. Here he says, what does Rava mean? So Hachi Kamar, what Rava meant to ask was Yifaisla b'fnei atzma. It should have its own piyus. It shouldn't just be a drag along with the Chumas Hadeshin if it's its own service. Gemara says Kidam Rinan. Yeah. Ela Kidam Rinan, the Marsha says. As we said. What does that mean, as we said? As we said that what? Maybe what it means is that the Chumas Hadeshin really doesn't require the PS. And we just did that because of a occurrence that took place, and this is the real PS. Maybe that's what it means. Pious. PS, pious. Appeasement. Yeah. It's the English. Yeah. Okay. Lememra, is this to say the Avodah Tama, the Zor Chayv Lamisa Boy pious? The pronunciation of pious. This is my grandmother said that this guy, she says this guy went to this Jewish guy went to Rome, and it's what they do in Rome. So I went to go speak to the Pope. So what are you talking to the Pope about? He says, "Oh, what do you mean?" I went inside. I said, "What's his nias pious?" What's this pious? Pope pious. Anyway, that's why I keep saying pious. The pious pious. Okay, so. Yeah, so they did get to put up the wood, but what I was asking is why was it a tag along with the same guy that did this? Isn't that its own service? You should have its own lottery. Oh, I see what you're asking. Bill's asking, if that's the answer, kidamrinan. I mean, the Gemara doesn't explain what it means, kidamrinan. If what the Gemara means is that the Trumas Hadeshin really didn't have its own lottery, and it was really the lottery belonged to the wood, and we only instituted it by the Trumas Hadeshin because of the occurrence. So then the Trumas Hadeshin becomes the tag along, which maybe that's acceptable, but then. But then, how would it go originally? Originally, who did the Trumas Hadeshin? But that was the race. And originally, who did the wood? That would have had to been its own pious. I guess. I don't know. The Gemara now says, let's see. The Meimer Davai the Tama Bezar Chayv Lisa by Pious Inzar Chayv Lamisa Lay by Pious very Shchita. You're making it look like the pious, the lottery, it goes along with something that's a complete service and it can't be a zar. But it's not true. They had a pious for the Shchita. The Gemara says, well, Shani Shchita did Tchilas Savay the Yomami. That's funny that it's a Tchilas Savay the Yomami. The Tchilas Savay maybe. The emphasis here wasn't the day aspect. The emphasis here was that it was Tchilas Havayda. So, well, that's a unique thing because that's the first service of the sacrifice. Okay, now we have to jump again to skip the Memra until Maisa Shahaya. Amar Mazutra. It's 5 lines from the end. Amar Mazutra v'itema Ravashi. Mazutra says, and some say Ravashi says, Afana nami tanina. It was also taught in a Mishnah or a Mishnah. Check if it's the time for the shchita. Vilosman see the gizreyetzim like tani, but it doesn't say if it's the time for the shida shnei gizreyetzim. What do you see? Because the shida shnei gizreyetzim was done by night. Where it says hach the less late kanta katani, hach this late kanta like katani. That's not a proof. Did we need to say this was by day? I thought we switched and we said we weren't concerned if this is considered by day or not. Our main concern was that it was a Avodah Tama, that it was a complete Avodah. Maybe what it means is like this. Why isn't it telling me what time I need to do the 2 slabs of wood? Because the 2 slabs of wood is completing the service of the Siddur Hamarata, which was setting up the fire, which that was done actually earlier by night. And this is considered an Avodah Tama, not something that begins by day. If it's the completion of the Siddur Hamarata, which is by night, then it's not going to tell me what time it needs to be done. If it's the beginning of the day, then it should tell me. If it's not a completion of the other one, then it should tell me what time it needs to be done. So we're saying, I'll prove it to you that it's a completion of the old service. Siddur HaMaracha because it doesn't tell me what time it needs to be done. The Gemara says, well, that's not necessarily so, because maybe it's only saying something that would have no way of fixing it. And here, there is a way of fixing it. That's why it didn't tell me what time it was. Let's go a drop further. Amuna Mamamuna. Person in charge says, Sura'u, go and see. Mamuna Rashi tells us is the Sagan. Says, go and see. If it's a time for the time to shech. So imigia. They'll say, yeah, they would go up to a certain area. They would go onto the wall, to the roof. It has to be shech. The sacrifice, the carbon tamid shel shach has to be shechted by day. So it has to be light. Imigia, if it was the correct time, haraya aimer, then the one that was looking, the one that went to the roof, would shout out, Bar Kai. Bar Kai means it's shining, like a flash, right? Barakamabre, it's a flash. Masya ben Shmuel Heyer Pnei Kol HaMizrach Ad Shebechevron. He says that they would say that the light of the east is shining until Chevron. The whole east is shining until Chevron. Actually, they would ask him, Heyer Pnei Kol HaMizrach Ad Shebechevron, is the whole east shining until Chevron? And they would respond, the fellow on the roof would say, yes. Why did they need to go through that? One time, the light of the moon was shining, and it appeared that it was light. They shechted it, and then they realized that it wasn't sunrise yet. They had to burn it. They realized that they shechted the tamid in the wrong time. Can't. You're not old enough. So Hiridu Kain Gadol Beis Atfila. That the Gemara will explain. Kain Gadol goes down to the mikvah. Zeh Haklal. Here's the rule. Zeh Haklal Hayav Mikdash. This is the rule that was in the Beis Mikdash. Kol Meisachas Ragla, of anyone that uses the bathroom. And number 2, he defecates. Tan Tvila, he has to go to the mikvah. Kol Amatal Mayim, anyone that urinates. Tan Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, he has to wash his hands and his feet. The Gemara says, Tanya, here Rashi is on both sides of the page, so if you're looking for that. There's no Taisvus. Rabbi Yishmael Eimer, Barak Barkai. He says that a flash of light. Rabbi Kiva Eimer, Ola Barkai. It's not just a flash of light, but the light has risen. That means it's like a constant light. Nechumya ben Afkeshuyin Eimer. It's a new one for us. He says, Af Barkai Bechevron. It's also shining it's also light in Chevron. Masi ben Shmuel, Hamamuna Alapaises, Masi ben Shmuel, who was in charge of the lotteries, he says, that he would say that it's shining until Chevron, the whole east. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseir, and everyone is going out to work. Sounds like 1 second. Work starts from sunrise. Is it sunrise or dawn? I don't remember what it says in the Gemara. The Gemara learns from Nehemiah when it says that they went to work from the Minabayka the era. I'm not sure if that means sunrise or dawn. The Gemara says, if it's already time for the people to go to work, then it's much lighter than what we require. So the Gemara says, Liskar Pailim Kamina. They're not going to work. The workers don't go yet. Yeah, the guys are going out. The guy is going to find workers. Yeah, okay. Let's leave it over here. Yeah, good to watch. Oh boy. You'll be back for Shavuos.